On the night of November 15, 1966, two young couples driving through a West Virginia wildlife reserve saw something that broke them. Not frightened them, not unsettled them, broke them. Standing in the road was a creature 7 feet tall, gray-skinned, with wings folded against its back, and eyes. Two enormous red eyes that glowed like hot coals in the dark. The car accelerated to 100 miles an hour. The thing kept pace, effortlessly, without even fully spreading its wings. That was the first official sighting. It would not be the last. Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 was a town already carrying weight it didn't ask for. A former wartime TNT manufacturing site sat rotting on the edge of town, the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, locals called it. During World War II, the U.S. government had pumped the ground there full of chemicals to produce munitions, then simply walked away. The soil was poisoned, the wildlife was strange, and the residents, many of them working-class families who'd never moved far from where they were born, had no idea what that abandoned land was slowly releasing into their air and water, into their bodies, into their minds. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives, factory workers, homemakers, farmers, who had no framework for what was about to descend on their town. Literally. Over the next 13 months, more than 100 people in the Point Pleasant area reported seeing it, the Mothman, always near the TNT area, always at night, always with those eyes. Roger Scarberry, one of the first witnesses, was not a man given to fantasy. He was 22, working class, skeptical. He went to the police, so did his wife, so did the other couple in the car. The local sheriff, George Johnson, took their report seriously enough to investigate. He found nothing, but he believed them. That detail matters. These were not people seeking attention. Several witnesses reported physical after effects, burning eyes, nausea, headaches that lasted for days. But here's what they didn't know. The sightings weren't the only strange thing happening in Point Pleasant that fall. Phone calls. That's what the town started experiencing next. Witnesses reported bizarre interference on their lines, mechanical voices, high-pitched squealing, conversations that seemed to be monitored or interrupted. Researcher and journalist John Keel, who arrived in Point Pleasant to investigate and would later write the Mothman Prophecies, documented dozens of these accounts. People described feeling watched, feeling followed. Then came the Men in Black, not the movie version, but something more unsettling. Witnesses reported visits from pale, oddly dressed men who drove dark cars, asked strange questions about the sightings, and warned people not to talk. One witness, a woman named Mary Heyer, who worked as a local reporter and had become a clearinghouse for Mothman reports, described a short, strange man with thick glasses who appeared in her office asking about her files. When she reached for the phone to call someone, he grabbed it from her hand, stared at it as if he'd never seen one before, then laughed and walked out. She never saw him again. Then something happened that made everything worse. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge, a suspension bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed during rush hour traffic. 46 people died. Cars and bodies plunged into the Ohio River. It was one of the deadliest bridge disasters in American history. Here's what they don't tell you in the legend. That bridge had been under strain for years. The Silver Bridge was built in 1928 using then innovative I-bar chain suspension design, but by the 1960s, engineers had growing concerns about aging infrastructure across America. The bridge had never been properly inspected in the years leading up to its collapse. The investigation afterward revealed that a single corroded eye-bar link, just 2 inches long, had been slowly failing for years. The estimated cost of proper maintenance and inspection would have been a fraction of what the collapse ultimately cost in lives, lawsuits, and reconstruction. The National Bridge Inspection Standards, the federal law requiring regular inspection of American bridges, were passed because of the Silver Bridge collapse. Before that disaster, there were no federal requirements. None. Property and infrastructure investment had been systematically underfunded in towns like Point Pleasant for decades. These were not wealthy communities. Their bridges, their roads, their public infrastructure were deprioritized, while industrial interests, including the very companies that had poisoned the TNT area, lobbied against regulation and environmental accountability. 46 people died because a 2-inch piece of metal was allowed to corrode unchecked for 40 years. The Mothman, in the mythology that crystallized after the bridge fell, became a prophet of doom. People looked back and realized many witnesses had reported seeing the creature on or near the Silver Bridge in the weeks before the collapse. Some claimed it had appeared as a warning. Others said it caused the disaster. John Keel, for his part, believed something stranger, that the Mothman, the Men in Black, and the phone interference and the bridge collapse were all connected to a phenomenon he called ultra-terrestrials, entities that exist alongside us, feeding on human fear and catastrophe. He wasn't the type to reach that conclusion lightly. He'd spent years as a skeptic. Point Pleasant changed him. This isn't just history. Right now, the American Civil Engineers Association estimates that over 42,000 bridges across the United States are classified as structurally deficient. The infrastructure bill passed in 2021 allocated funds for repairs, but implementation has been slow, funding gaps remain, and many of the most vulnerable bridges serve rural and low-income communities that lack the political leverage to demand urgent action. Sound familiar? The same communities ignored by industrial policy in the 1960s are still waiting for the same systems to prioritize their lives over cost-cutting calculations. The real demon in Point Pleasant wasn't a 7-foot winged creature with glowing red eyes. The real demon was the quiet, bureaucratic decision to let a bridge decay for 40 decades because the people who crossed it every day weren't wealthy enough to matter. The Mothman became a legend, the eye-bar link became a footnote, and 46 families in West Virginia and Ohio spent Christmas of 1967 burying someone they loved. We've been taught to see the Mothman as folklore, a campfire story, a quirky piece of American weird. But what if the creature, real or imagined, was never the warning? What if the warning was everything else? The poisoned land, the crumbling bridge, the community nobody was watching out for. What if we're still not listening? So here's the question I want you to sit with. What infrastructure, literal or institutional, is silently corroding around you right now, and who profits from the fact that nobody's being paid to check? If that question unsettles you, you're paying attention. Subscribe, because next time we go somewhere even darker.